You know, you're not going to hit the lottery every meal, and that's where randomness gets you, and that's where this whole health chasers idea, self-experimentation to achieve something amazing in health and in life. That's kind of where that idea originates from, because it's just not going to happen randomly.
Health Chasers, achieving high health and happiness through the practices of self-experimentation. Dude, I am doing an amazing experiment right now. You're not even going to believe this. I don't know what you're going to think of this. Do you want to know?
Of course.
All right. I was going to just have a basil tea with the episode, with the maple syrup, but I said, forget that. I'm going to go all out. So I actually was, this happened yesterday. I saw this packet of mushroom coffee, because I think we were talking about this the other day, or in the last podcast maybe.
We talk about mushrooms every podcast.
but you were talking about how the some of the, I guess, other people were trying the mushroom with the coffee.
Oh yes.
So I saw it as in the checkout line. I saw an instant coffee, or not coffee, but instant like mushroom powder that you can put in the coffee.
Okay.
And it had a bunch of, not a bunch, but a couple of different things in it. One of them was, I guess, holy basil. I've never tried it, so I'm doing that right now with my on top of that, another large basil leaf with the maple syrup.
And what? How long ago did you do that?
I'm doing it right now, bro.
Oh, so we'll see if there's results. We'll see them in the next couple minutes.
Exactly. So yeah.
Huh. It's kind of like the diet, where you're never really going to know where your diet's going to end up, where your health's going to end up, unless you know all the factors involved, and then you can kind of get to a destination with your health. You need to know all the health factors, and so I guess it's just worth thinking about the destination with something like a podcast or some project that we're doing. Is if you don't know the destination, you're not even going to be aware of all the factors happening, and it's basically just going to be wacky chaos until it goes some direction that you wouldn't want it to go.
That makes so much sense. I've never really thought about it like that. True randomness. There's no. So at least for me, before in the early days, I had just randomness, nothing orchestrated in meals. And then I always kind of hoped that it would turn out okay, you know.
Yeah, that you bring up an interesting point for the people who kind of know a little bit more about numbers in the audience. If there's only a few good ways to eat to be really healthy, but there's thousands and thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of bad ways to eat. If you're just going off of randomness says the vast majority of the time it's going to end up horribly. You know, you're not going to hit the lottery every meal, and that's where randomness gets you, and that's where this whole health chasers idea, self-experimentation to achieve something amazing in health and in life, that's kind of where that idea originates from, because it's just not going to happen randomly. And like every young person, I think by our culture, is led to believe that just amazing things are going to happen randomly, and every once in a while they do, but
yeah,
it still follows the laws of probability and whatnot, where most of the time it won't.
Yeah. Your genetics can only take you so far, even if they're above average.
That's an interesting point to bring up, because I've been wanting to talk about set points. Have I mentioned set points to you before? Can't remember.
I don't think so.
So I think of what other people call genetics. I think of more as set points, as in you're set either you're set in that specific mode from birth, and then it can change to get worse later on, or maybe you get set in that point, that mode, sometime in your youth, maybe in your teens, but you get like set points in certain hormone pathways that funnel hormones to specific destinations. So like, some people are just born and they're super high testosterone. Some people are born, or some point in their youth, they're super. I knew this girl in college that was just insanely excited about everything, And other people, that's some ways you can be like, man, why is she so excited about everything, But then on the other hand, you're like, being around her, you also become excited about things, and so it was actually really cool to be around her and just feel that wonder. But that was like her set point. It was just constant excitement. And the path towards old age with following randomness, because most people are just following randomness, eventually ends up with that set point changing for the worse and becoming not excitement, like a lacking of excitement.
Right.
In fact, me and you kind of have a mutual friend where he had this vibe that was just based on like really high excitement, and then we didn't see him for many years, and we saw him later, and we both, I think, remarked on the fact, man, that excitement was gone. Like, what happened? That's crazy to just, it's there, and then the next time you see that person, it's vanished, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think of that kind of as like hormone set points, where you're only going to get set in the good mode of something, usually earlier in life. Maybe on birth, maybe in gestation, maybe, when you're 6, maybe when you're 10. I'm not sure, but that's what I call it, set points.
I like that. I was reading this book, but it kind of reminded me of, essentially he talks about everything can be flipped, like mentally. It doesn't matter what stage of life you're in, or where you're at, or what you're doing, whether it be good or bad. It's always looked at as a opportunity to be badass with yourself and your health.
It's so funny. They make these movies of like, it's like an older person, and, maybe they just got divorced, or maybe they need to restart their life. But the movie plot is like, all they have to do is decide to do fun stuff, and then they will be fun, and they'll live this fun life, and everyone will love them. And I always watch those movies, and maybe they're entertaining, but it's such a crock of shit. Life doesn't work that way. If you're in horrible health, you don't just decide to start having fun and have it happen at 50 years old. You're not having fun because you've short-circuited your fun circuits. You need to fix those circuits before you are able to have fun.
Oh my God, I love that saying. You short-circuited your fun circuits. The term grocery list and how that's looked at. What are your thoughts on that, and where people kind of look to at that when they're making a grocery list?
I've had to make up my own terms for stuff in this journey, because the terms don't exist. So if you're first in some field, you get to make up the language, because the terms just don't really exist. So grocery list is a term that I use to, it's not just what you go to the store and buy, but it's the full list of everything you're eating in that period. So I think I've probably asked you before, if you asked me like, hey, why is such and such health thing going on? And I'm like, man, I don't know, but what's your grocery list? Maybe I can narrow things down, because if you give me the list of everything you're eating in that kind of time period, then I can maybe hopefully get a sense of kind of where things are going with your health and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a short way of saying everything that you're eating in that time period. And it can't just be for a day, like, hey, this is my grocery list for Monday, and then I have a different grocery list for Tuesday. It has to be more kind of encompassing in that at least a week or a month or something like that. Just include everything you had. Probably a week or two is kind of better, but like everything you ate for that week or two needs to be on that list. Even if it's just like one day you had something like that, it still comes into play. Unfortunately, it makes our life way more complex and harder to decipher, but still comes into play.
Yeah, I find myself going a lot of the times on how I feel and or what I want to make for dinner for that day. I have sometimes an idea of meals for dinner that I'll want to make, but if I don't want them that day and I'm just really wanting something else, I'll find myself going back to the grocery store to get, such and such thing that I forgot to grab or whatever for that one thing.
Yeah. How often do you go to the grocery store?
At least 3 or 4 times a week.
I go almost every day to the grocery store. There's experiments pop up so often where it's just like, now is the time to try this thing, but I don't have one of the ingredients. I gotta go run out and get it. And then that experiment fails, and I'm like, well, I don't need this stuff anymore. Just chuck it right out. And maybe next week I'll have to buy it again. But
I remember you would do that several times when you're at your house, and I'd be over there, and you would just say, "Do you just want this?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I'll take all that. All right." And I just remember going home with like just this 2 bags full of groceries because you're done with all that stuff. When you go to the grocery store, do you have an outlook of recipe, like meal plans that you put together, or meal concepts, or is it just things that you buy that you can put together and pair when you feel like it?
I would say, well, I'm trying to get my meals where they're kind of set, because I think that's kind of the ancient people's way of doing things, which they had, if they were making like, if it was Italians, and they had this spaghetti recipe, passed down by grandmother to grandmother, it was pretty much set in stone, and they passed that exact recipe down because they knew that recipe was badass. So I'm trying to get to that point where these meals are set in stone, and I'm not eating spaghetti, but let's just say I had a spaghetti meal set in stone. It's not like I would eat that every day. Maybe I could, maybe I couldn't, maybe once every 3 days, maybe once every 2 days, but anytime I have a spaghetti meal, it's the same. It's exactly the same, pretty much, give or take, maybe one item or something. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to get all my meals like that, where it's, because we got so much to learn from the ancient people, the people that like Weston Price visited in the 20s and 30s or 40s, that time period, and he went to places where there was no road going there. You had to take a boat or just hike in, and he visited people that had just been eating the same damn way for thousands of years. And he didn't really exactly explain like the meal combinations, so we kind of have to guess a little bit there. But yeah, I'm guessing that they're pretty darn set in their meal. They know this meal works pretty damn good, and they're just gonna stay with that.
Yeah.
So that's the direction I'm headed with stuff.
What about with your plan, high complexity versus low complexity? How would a high complex meal be created versus the lower?
It's tough. So you get into this health experimentation, health craziness, and you realize that you got to question everything. You got to question your most basic meals that you're eating. If you have bacon and eggs in the morning, you got to question, well, is the eggs a good thing? Okay. Is the bacon a good thing? It's like, well, how do you determine that eating all those things together? Let's say you eat bacon, eggs, hash browns, and toast with strawberry jam, and that's just like your morning meal. A lot of people are set like that, where they have a meal and it's like they'll have the same thing every time. So that's what you eat. How are you going to know? You're just starting out in health. You've lived for 20 years, 25 years, let's say, on this earth. You just got involved in health, and that's what you have for breakfast every morning. And how do you start looking at that and finding out which ingredients are fucking you? What do you do? You know, you just guess, like, well, fuck, I think the bacon's fucking me. You could do that, and you could take out the bacon, maybe add something else, or maybe you just leave it completely out. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's one way. Or you take the meal down to less complexity. Maybe you just have the eggs and bacon, no hash browns, no toast with jam. Or maybe you just have the eggs with hash browns. And I'm not saying you're going to get like good results from meals doing that, because I think the really good results come from complex meals. You know, like 10 ingredients per meal or maybe more. I haven't really added up the numbers of my meals that I'm doing now, but you're going to have to think like that. You're going to have to do stuff like that, whatever it takes to get results. Because it's not going to be simple. It's not going to be obvious what is happening and the effects that are coming. Because that's how you're going to start. You're going to start, all of a sudden, your mind's thinking of this stuff, and I need to know what's screwing me over in this meal, and how do you know? How can you tell?
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of health experts that claim to be experts that have a huge following, they don't talk about that very often. They kind of more so are on board with telling everybody what's bad, but they don't really give you a direction besides the mainstream. Oh, you know you got to have your fruits and vegetables. You know you have your greens, but nothing in specific that can really take you to the next level.
Yeah. Well, it's like me and you wouldn't be doing a podcast if there was like a simpler method of conveying information. Like this stuff is so complex. We have to do this long form conversation about what's going on to get all the concepts out there to someone. Like if someone was like I look forward to the day if someone's like starting out in their health journey just like by listening to us. Like we are the first things that they listen to, and they get away from a lot of the rubbish, in my opinion, a lot of the rubbish that's preached out there by, like, you know, separating foods into carbs. Like you view carbs just as carbs, and then you view fats just as fats. That's like such poisonous thinking, in my opinion.
I can't even remember the last time I actually thought about food like that.
It's completely not helpful. You could have avocado and poison your kidneys, or you can have, I don't know, an almond and get by just fine. Not that I'm saying one's bad and one's good. I'm not saying the almond's good or the avocado's bad, but the avocado, in my opinion, it actually is really bad in large amounts. Maybe in tiny amounts, yeah, no, it's not a big deal.
Right, right.
But those are you know, you got to find out those things for yourself. You can't listen to someone say that avocado's toxic and they just never eat it again. I don't care who that person is. You don't take their word for it like that. With something that so many people, so many thousands, millions, and millions of people have eaten for thousands of years. You don't just take their word for it. You run the experiment yourself. And if the exact effect happens that they say is going to happen, well, then maybe you rethink that food.
Right, right.
Like just depending on how someone wants to get into this health journey, they might have to go to a very simple diet of, you know, meat and potatoes or something like that, or just find their things for them. Like red potatoes is something for me that's just very, very simple, easy. There's not a lot of effects coming from red potatoes. It's kind of just extremely simple what it does, and it's very safe. It's not a gut destroyer. Doesn't, you know, I don't really
Mm.
notice any negative effects from it. So it's like if you can figure out something like that, it's like, okay, well, I can base a meal around this and I can try different things, but that red potato always stays the same. I don't use lower complexity meals unless I'm trying to build a new meal from scratch. The same way that someone built that spaghetti, that amazing spaghetti recipe passed down from grandmother to grandmother, someone built that from scratch, basically, or over time it came together. You know, maybe they were passed down from their parents only 3 ingredients, and then they added the fourth and fifth ingredient, and then they passed it down to the next grandmother who added like the sixth ingredient. Maybe something like that happened, but if I'm,
Mm.
you know, I kind of do my meals based on one thing, and that thing I'm pretty sure that it's good, relatively not harmful, and then go up from there. And
Progress.
yeah. So for me, it's like build a meal based on the red potatoes, build a meal maybe based on meat, maybe build a meal based on eggs, sometimes build a meal based on a fruit, like an apple, or maybe even honey. Maybe even base a meal off of like honey or something like that.
Interesting. You
Yeah.
mentioned you mentioned kidney cloggers.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on like foods and stuff with your own self experimentation, like foods that have given you uh, that symptom?
So, if you have a a bad kidney clogging, and that's just my term, I just made that up because that's what it feels like. But if you have bad kidney clogging, your back is gonna hurt, your mid back. It'll manifest as mid back pain, and everyone like you'll just go to the doctor and be like, oh, I just got this mid back pain, and they'll diagnose it as back pain. Like, oh man, this guy's just got terrible back pain. I don't know what they do. They probably just throw pain relievers at you, and I guess it'll muffle the pain as far as the pain receptors, but it will actually make the pain worse because whatever pain med they give you probably will also go on to clog the kidneys worse.
Right.
So, but that's a little bit more severe where you get to the point of actually like kind of feeling the sensation of pain back there. But what you would notice before that is certain things that need to be activated by the kidneys, and I think that's where the K1 to K2 conversion happens, and I think that's where the vitamin D becomes activated and useful. I think that's where it happens. So just a minor kidney clog will just stop your vitamin D activation for that day. And you're not going to notice that from pain. You'll notice that through the expression of vitamin D that you should normally be sensing. You should have a taste for calcium foods, maybe milk, maybe something else that has calcium. You should have a taste for that.
Have you early on in your health journey, did you know you were having kidney pain, or did you just think it was back pain?
Back pain. I actually, I did a lot of bad eating as a kid. I actually remember this flight coming back. It's like a multi-hour flight, and I just had the worst kidney/back pain, or it was kidney pain, but yeah, we'll just call it that. It was just the worst ever. And I remember just like sitting there suffering as a kid, just like getting used to suffering, basically, because I was just looking at a watch and just like counting down the minutes, and I think it was like a 5-hour flight. But I was just like counting down the minutes where I would be on this flight, just experiencing this pain. It was really bad kidney clog, so it was quite painful. And then probably something about the flight made it more painful, because I think there's a lot of energy racing around on a jet. I mean, if you look at some sort of turbine that makes electricity, you could make the case that it looks almost exactly like, or very, very similar to a jet engine. So if you think of a jet as like two turbines making electricity in the sky, then maybe your mind can kind of get a glimpse of like the electrical dynamics, what's happening to you when you're in that plane. So I think of the kidneys as like your number one, or one of the top energy organs. It's the number one that can get easily screwed up.
Okay.
And so that was like the perfect storm to have like really jacked up kidneys. It's almost like they're clogged, and then they need electricity to like go through them to just complete a circuit and do whatever my body needs to do. And there was that clog, but then there was also like this huge electrical pressure trying to make it through those kidneys at the same time. That experience, those type of experiences, is probably what pushed me along this path, kind of subconsciously, as a real young person. Because I was maybe like, I don't know, 10, 11 when that happened.
Were there any foods early on, or I guess maybe currently, that you know have given you those kidney clogger symptoms, besides maybe avocado?
Definitely avocado. I think just in general, too much fat without you utilizing the fat can definitely do that. I think as a kid, it was always a peanut butter. I would have peanut butter like every single day, and I'm pretty sure that was the main culprit in my youth. There's a lot of other things. I probably don't even think about them anymore, because once I know something's a kidney clogger. Oh, mushrooms. I think of mushrooms as kidney cloggers. I almost never eat them. Very, very rarely eat them.
Really?
Yeah, that's why I'm always like, you're always like saying all this praise of mushrooms, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, man. I don't know.
I'll keep an eye out for that.
Oh, yeah, I guess maybe I should have put that on your radar, that's the symptom you should be looking out for.
Well, it's hard to say, because I want to say one of my main symptoms every morning when I wake up is back tightness with the first hour within the first hour of waking up. Of course, I think a lot of people, or at least most people, would just say it's the bed that's causing the problem. But I know it's much more complicated than that, and I've yet to solve that problem. But it would be nice to wake up one day without back pain of some sorts.
Yeah.
It's probably one of my motivations of why I'm stretching so much. It's just to stay ahead of it, and a lot of things like naturally tighten up, I guess.
Well, you've kind of had some back issues for long periods, right? And you know that it's not necessarily kidney clogging, right? Because I put that that simple idea on your radar a long time ago.
Right. Yeah, no, I kind of think it's a combination of a couple different things. I've got 4 bulging discs in my lower back. There was a catastrophic event where I couldn't move because of the pain. Was 10 for 10.
That's kind of interesting, because I've done a lot of work with trying to figure out bone, because it seems like there's an ebb and flow based on your nutrition needs. Hypothetically, you could be in the stage where you pull from the bone to get maybe calcium, maybe phosphate, probably one of those two. That's why you're pulling your bone apart. But it's like, I've definitely noticed an ebb and flow where your bone can build, and you're not going to have any kind of bone pain, and then there can be a pull on the bone where you for whatever reason you can't get that stuff from food, and so you're pulling it out, and then all of a sudden I can have some kind of mild bone pain, and then I can generally fix that with nutrition and environmental factors that are appropriate. And then by not paying attention, I'll get into a situation again where there's that pull from the skeleton, and usually you don't notice it kind of at first, because it's like your bones can build up and build up and build up, and then there won't be pain or any indication that it's pulling from the skeleton until it just keeps pulling, and it reaches that point where it causes pain, and then that's the only time you can notice. So it's a very difficult thing to work with, because I need sensations from the body to tell me what's going on. And so if you don't get those until the very last moment, where it's like you could be in severe pain, because I've actually had some tooth problems, and some of the teeth have become eroded, but I've actually seen them rebuild too. Like one part of the tooth got exposed some gum. I knew it was exposed. I could feel it with my tongue. And then now that part of the tooth has shot back like 50% of what it was, a long time ago, and I can feel that in with my tongue.
Mm-hmm.
So you won't really find anywhere in the online literature of bone regrowth. Like there's kind of people talking about it, but or as far as tooth regrowth, like they don't. I think a lot of the so-called medical professionals just don't believe that it's possible. They think that's something that like lizards do. Lizards can regrow limbs and whatnot, but not human beings. But just with my experiments, I've definitely proved that, at least for myself, that teeth can absolutely regrow. You give them the right environment, they will regrow. But I don't really know what that perfect environment is yet.
Unfortunately, with the 5G towers being implemented almost everywhere, it might be kind of tough.
Yeah, it's there's quotes from people who talk about the destruction that they see around them in people's bodies, like as early as like the 19 teens. I think I saw one quote from like 1915 or somewhere around there, talking about because electricity had been introduced in like 1891, somewhere around there. And so, that person already had 20-something years of seeing electricity in people's homes, the people he knew. And so he was prime witness to see the destruction in people's bodies coming from that. And there's a lot of quotes like that. And no one thinks of that like something so amazing and brought us, the artificial light and all these things that could be destructive to our body. But what they didn't realize was our body's using that same type of energy. They're using electricity, just in a little different way, maybe. But why wouldn't it be destructive to have that running like a foot away from you?
Yeah, it just seems everything is kind of interconnected in so many different ways. So I think we talked about I want to say recently, within the last like year or so, you've really gotten into different residences that your body is in a constant relationship with.
It's resonance is something that I kind of just got to go into talking about what I do know, because there's so much about it that I don't know. Really, a resonance is just something that resonates other things. It's almost like some sort of vibration here that, like they do with the resonance of glass. They do the thing around the lid of a glass and have it create that noise, and then it breaks a glass across the room.
Mm-hmm.
So resonance is like sending a vibration from one place to another. There's not really ideas of where it originates from, but it's like bouncing around the Earth's core, and there's certain Earth materials that amplify it, I guess you could say. And in my experiments, it's definitely affecting soil. So like it's one of the signals to spur on growth of microbes in the soil. Definitely fungus, maybe bacteria as well. Mm-hmm. And so you'll see plant growth coming just from the resonance. And I've done a lot of most of my plants have been in pots, actually. So in the pots, you're blocking a lot of the resonance from getting through from the earth through the plastic or whatever material to the plant. And the best plant growth that I've seen has been in those terracotta, like ceramic type pots, like the breakable ones.
Okay.
That I've seen do really good growth.
Let's talk about that concept. Let's go with the bad leaching first, to make sure people know what the bad signs are of that.
So metal leaching is if you put metal in contact with some food substance, like water or juice or vinegar or basically anything, as long as it's like a semi-viscous, and it can make a lot of contact with the metal, some of that metal comes off and becomes like part of that food. So I don't know why everyone is not aware of this. It's absolutely insane. Like if you wrap something in aluminum foil and then cook it, you're gonna get some aluminum alloy particles in that food.
And whatever else is in there.
Well, yeah, I mean it's like aluminum foil is not it's not pure aluminum because that it would be too soft. There's I don't even know what else is in it. You know, a bunch of probably like 5 different other metals, and that's I don't think that's even the worst one. I think really the worst is stainless steel. Like we all use these stainless steel utensils, and the mucous membranes in the mouth, I'm pretty sure, will start that leaching process if they come in contact with that fork, the stainless steel fork, and so you'll start leaching the surface metal molecules into your mouth, and they're sucked in really easily, quickly. And if you have that spoon in some sort of food that causes that leaching process, like it might just be hot, it might be hot food, definitely acidic food, and then maybe basic food, although you don't there's not too much basic foods, but usually it's acidic stuff that'll really cause a lot of leaching, and causes all sorts of bad problems, man. Screw your gut up horribly. You can see kind of personality differences in people that are just have this overflow of metals. This is almost like the poster boy topic for just how jacked up our human environment is at this time. And I think this is the great awakening for health. Obviously, it's a great awakening for a lot of things, but I think it's the start of the great awakening for health, where people are actually going to become aware of this stuff. Like, oh man, this is actually like affecting me. This is affecting who I am every day. The soybean oil that I eat in every single food actually might be contributing to my anger problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's gonna hit people's minds, and hopefully cause a just dramatic shift away from the horrible people that we've been before previous years. Because there's just no need. There's no need for all that unhappiness and suffering. There might still be some, a little bit, but there's no need for just mass scale unhappiness. Not necessary.
That's a bird, right?
Yeah, that's a bird.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure if it wasn't like a door swinging back and forth or something. So I guess a lot of this acidic foods, probably like spaghetti or tomato sauce, different kinds of like probably most canned goods would have some sort of potentially negative health effects.
Yeah, I kind of decided the other day I don't think I'm going to eat any canned food ever at all anymore. It's not worth it. It's just a health destroyer. It takes away more than it gives. And I know for a long time we were doing canned peaches, and we're rinsing the peach to try and get any of the sugar that they use to preserve it and get any of the metals off. And I think it got most of that stuff off, but now I realize that I think there's a chemical reaction happening possibly with the vitamin C, where over time the vitamin C degrades and pulls in a metal ion. So I think that I'm guessing it's chromium or nickel or maybe a different metal, but that becomes part of the peach, basically, in my opinion now. There's just a small amount of it that becomes part of that peach. It's not the best situation.
Right.
Now maybe you need some of the, like I'm always wondering about chromium. I do kind of lean towards thinking that it is a necessary nutrient. I believe it's involved in the vitamin D activation process in very, very, very small amounts. Well, vitamin C degrades. It degrades and it becomes, I believe, it becomes oxalic acid. And so that acid likes to bond to certain things, like calcium, because there's certain preferential things that oxalate will bind to, and I think chromium's one of them. So that's what I believe is what's happening. And I don't even know if we have, machines that'll tell us exactly what is in stuff. Like if you want to know what's in this peach, like I've never been in a lab So I don't know exactly what these machines do, but based on how I've seen labs dissect what's in this quaxine that's out there, they're just kind of guessing. There's no machine or computer that they can put this food in and it tells you exactly what it is and what's in there. You know, it's always going to be some scientist's kind of guesstimate. And that's my interpretation. Anyways.
That'd be nice to know if you had like some sort of laser pointer and they told you a list of everything.
I know, right?
Of course,
how do we know all these like foods? The ingredients that it says on the box is actually what's in it. Like, can they even test? Like, I know they can test for like real simple things. Like, if something says it has added iron, I know they can test for that very, very easily. But something more complex, something that's not just a specific kind of atom, some protein type thing. I don't know if they can do it that well. Like I had trouble even finding a list of sulfur content of different foods. Like I want a list of sulfur content of every food that has sulfur, starting from the most to the least. And I kind of found it maybe once or twice, but then you look at two different lists and they have completely different things as like their top sulfur food. So there's some disconnect somewhere, like something is wrong. It's misinterpreting of the information, or something is not going right there.
What about some of the good things?
Copper is one of them. Amazing at killing microbes in certain areas. In general, though, if you're just wanting metal content, like if you're just low copper, maybe, the best thing to do would be to get that from food. And shrimp is by far the best source that I personally know of. Possibly the other crustacean type foods. The metals in food is like bonded to proteins generally. It's always bonded to stuff. So when we're using leaching, that's why that copper can kill microbes, is because it's like in ionic form copper. If it was bonded to stuff like the copper is that's in shrimp, it doesn't have that effect. So hypothetically, you can use leaching to intake certain minerals. Like say you wanted zinc. Zinc's kind of a somewhat difficult one to pull out of the food. You could hypothetically leach it, but in general, that leached metal kind of destroys the gut in certain quantities, not just like right away in a small quantity, but just kind of over. If you take a huge influx of, say, stainless steel leaching, it'll kind of like rip away the lining of the gut kind of all at once, and then you have to slowly like rebuild that to get at kind of peak gut health.
Mm-hmm.
So leaching of metals is not like a success strategy long term to use that to get those metals. We're able to get away with it from copper because it's not every day. Like I do not recommend using the ionic copper that way, like every day. But if you do that once a week, it's totally no big deal.
Right. I just had my physical for work. Yeah, they are trying to measure like our mental health by asking us, I guess, personality questions.
Oh yeah.
But deep down, they don't make a whole lot of sense, because the ulterior motive is really just to try to find out if we want to kill ourselves or not. So,
how do they slip that in? Is the question like, okay, you're at the ice cream store, and your choices are vanilla, strawberry, chocolate, or killing yourself?
That's pretty much what they do. All right, well, sounds good, man. All right, well, I will talk to you on the next one, bro.
All right, man. Take it easy.
All right.